week from RYM, Patrick. Joined as always by Caleb, OptimalAudio from RYM, and worst podcast intros in the game, as always. Very confusing. How I can't seem to identify who we are. For all 5 of our listeners who definitely do know who we are, though, so I don't even know why I bother doing an intro. Anyway, this week we have a double shot episode for you. We're going to spend the first half talking about, we have an emergency episode because something happened last Friday that requires that being discussed immediately, which is the Charli XCX album, How I'm Feeling Now, which is easily the album of the year, which we both called going into, going ahead of time with every one of the singles. And it's lived up to its hype and so much more. And I think we both have a lot to say about that. And then the second half, we're going to do something we haven't done in a little while that we used to do a lot on the show. We're going to go into an artist and explore their discography, and we're going to do that with William Leonard Roberts IV, Officer Rick Ross, and we're going to go through his catalog, considering that he's ended it on a pretty good note, and is probably a little more relevant than he has been in some time, and it's probably due to drop something soon, I would say, since he tends to drop stuff yearly. So it feels like the right time to do him. I also couldn't think of anybody else on short notice. So.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with both of those topics. This album, yeah, you were right. I mean, we both knew. We both had been talking for a while since the first single came out that this was going to be something special. But I don't think either of us could have predicted that she would make the album in 6 weeks or something, 2 months, and then it would end up being as good as it is. Because honestly, there's not a thing about it that I don't like. And I've played it an unhealthy amount of times for the fact that it's only been out 4 days.
I have listened to pretty much nothing. I would say nothing but this album, but mostly this album in the times that I've gotten a chance to listen to music because my work schedule has been really shitty as of late. But I fit in as much listening to this album as possible. I burned it to a CD for my car because I live in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, of course, it fucking skipped after one play because do not buy verbatim CDs. This is a PSA from Living Off Borrowed Time. Verbatim CDs are trash. I've been buying them for years. I used to buy them because they had these really cool CDs that look like vinyl. And I'm an easy sell on shit like that, even though they were really expensive for a small quantity of them. But then I noticed that their shit's just gotten worse and worse and it scratches and skips very easily. Fuck verbatim CDRs. I am not buying them ever again. So my point being, I've tried to find any excuse I can to listen to this album because it's so goddamn addictive. But when I put it on, it's a challenge for me to not just replay Pink Diamond over and over. That song is it's On Site if On Site didn't have really dumb lyrics that you grew to love.
Yeah, I don't think, I think it's On Site for Charli in the sense that, you don't need to... You're not laughing at some of the things that in this case Kanye was saying. But I mean, you called this straight away. On first listen, you were talking about how that song reminded you of On Site, and I actually didn't really see it at first, but I've gone to see it now. It's that kind of statement where it's probably not as jarring as On Site was to for Kanye's discography, but I think it's interesting that she comes out swinging with that kind of song. I just want to go hard is a mantra that, you could just yell from the fucking rooftops, or out of your car or wherever you're playing this thing. She comes in with a lot of those on this album that are just instantly going to get stuck in your head. And not only are you not going to forget the instrumentals, but you're not going to forget, the sheer, almost audacity of what she's pulling off, because every hook on this thing is on point. The songwriting's on point. I don't get those people who have been saying the songwriting feels a little rushed. I mean, it was made in 6 weeks, and also every hook is great, so I don't see that point. But yeah, you're right. Pink Diamond, and it's so short too. It's 2.5 minutes. You can just play it over and over, and the next track is even better.
Well, just going back to Pink Diamond for a second. The on-site comparison is more just the use of fuzz and noise and feedback and the abrasive way of just coming out of the gate with those qualities. And that's the same sort of thing that you get out of on-site, where it just feels like it's a very rock rockist sort of move, I guess, to use a very RYM term, that if you were a non-RYM listener to this, you'd be like, rockist, what the fuck is this bullshit? Like, who talks like that? And the answer is people on this really weird website. But anyway, it's like a guitarist plugging into their amp and you get like a blast of feedback sort of thing. I don't know. That's kind of the impression I got of On Site, and then that's also the impression I get of this work. And then it very much fits what Charli's doing on the song, where it's just taking out all this repressed, like you're cooped up, you're quarantined, and all you want to do is just go out and fucking like scream, party with your friends. You have all this repressed rage, and she lets it out in a blast of music, and then just this repeated mantra, like you said, mantra of, I just want to go real hard. And it's very cathartic. There's a lot of that on the album too. She's like saying very naked. It's nakedly emotional in a way that feels immediate, but not cringy or embarrassing. And it's not overly thought out because it feels like she just had to get these thoughts down. It's how, like the title says it all. It's how she's feeling at the moment, how she's feeling now. And I feel like it's reflective of how a lot of people are feeling now over the course of the songs. She touches on a lot of universal emotions that everyone going through this entire ordeal has to be feeling.
Yeah, and there are so many lyrics and songs on this album that you could try to say, okay, well, they're not going to hold up as well when we're not in this moment, you know, in fucking 18 months, whenever it is deemed to be quote unquote safe again. Because we are getting hit with the second wave of this shit, but that's a whole other topic. I think, but I would disagree only because, yes, okay, it is the perfect album for the current situation for a lot of people, but these are emotions that I feel regularly I was going to feel regardless over the summer. So it might just be a me thing. It might just, you know, be a personal thing. But the way she talks, and I don't want to skip ahead too much from the track listing, but just the way she talks on songs like 7 Years and I Finally Understand and C 2.0, Party for You, like Visions, like those like, you know, lyrical topics, to say nothing of the actual like songwriting and the choruses and the instrumentals, just like those lyrical topics are very relevant to me on a daily basis in general. It would have been relevant to me if it came out this summer and there was no quarantine and there was no you know, pandemic going on. So I disagree with the notion, and I'm not saying a lot of people are saying it, but I'm sure there is a notion out there that's like, well, it's, you know, it's only going to be super relevant in, you know, this time. It is going to age, blah blah. Like what people always try to do when they take down albums is talk about how it's going to age and this and that. I first of all, the music is definitely gonna, if it's gonna age, it'll only age gracefully, because the music on here is amazing and it's a culmination of what's been happening in left field pop music for years now. And I think lyrically, I mean, I don't know about you, but lyrically, a lot of these themes really, really hit me, punch me in the gut on a lot of different occasions.
Oh yeah, it hit me hard too. I feel like the pandemic has just like heightened a lot of the same feelings a lot of us already had. It's just made things a lot more raw and exposed nerve. Like, that's a weird way to put it, but you know what I mean. But there's a lot of the same emotions, just a much more heightened sense, and I feel like this music reflects that. Charli, like musically, it reflects that. Lyrically, it reflects that. Yeah, and despite the lyrical content entirely, like if you want to set that aside entirely, you can just look at the music, which I feel, first of all, it's like a summation of everything Charli has done. I'm not as well versed on her as you are. I only just recently heard Vroom Vroom, which by the way is amazing. And I think is really kind of the first step towards where she is. Well, what was first, Vroom Vroom or Nuclear Seasons?
Well, Nuclear Seasons was in the True Romance.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Romance.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the song on there, so I always call that album that, but it's True Romance is the album I'm referring to.
And Nuclear Seasons was actually her first big single. It came out like a year before True Romance came out. Like that was what put her on the map, I think, with a lot of people.
Was that before Vroom Vroom?
Yeah, Vroom Vroom she had put out her second album, Sucker, in 2014, which was like, it's a good album. I think it's like her weakest studio effort. It's very like rooted in pop rock and like a lot of like electro pop and a lot of she was doing like power pop things on there. She's kind of like, it's not really like punk, it's more like a pop punky type album. It's more pop than punk, but it kind of has like a punk image. But anyway, so but that had some songs on there that got her mainstream success. Like that had Boom Clap on
Yeah,
there, stuff
song.
like that. Yeah.
I hate that song, but
Well, Vroom Vroom was the left turn. To answer your question, Vroom Vroom was when she started working with the PC music camp. So that was like that signified the change in her style.
yeah, and I mean, you can still hear the touches of the old electropop and other things in the new music. Again, like I feel like this is a synthesis of everything she's done, including and also absorbing like new trends, and not in a Drake sort of way where it's cannibalizing new trends, where it's just like seeing what works and kind of algorithming it to see how you can best capitalize off of it. I think she found what worked organically for her in like PC music and adapted to that, and then you come out with something like Claws, which is 100 gex basically, or 1,000 gex, a million gex. I don't know how many gex we're dealing with, um, but that very tinny, ramshackle, sort of banging around, clanging metal sound to it that she's able to ride like this perfect pop song where it's like every line is a hook. And it's a song that I thought was a little bit obnoxious the first time I heard it, although not as obnoxious as 100 gex. But although I still don't dislike 100 gex, but you can't deny the shit is obnoxious. Like that's one of the defining qualities.
100,
Um,
yeah, 100 gex is interesting to me because it's very like hyperactive. Like I don't know how to describe it, but it's very. There's something about it that I really do like, and it's grown on me over time. Um, I
I don't.
still, I mean, I prefer this album, obviously, like the 100 gex album, but I think there's something about it where it's kind of like I've listened to the 100 gex album a bunch because I was like intrigued by it, and now like I really enjoy it, and I think it's because like I've kind of adjusted to it. It's like your eyes adjusting to like the bright light in the morning. That's how I would describe it. Like you walk in a room and you're like, oh, but then you kind of like your eyes adjust over time and you're like, oh, this is good.
I would compare it more to something like a very sugary food that you have to develop a tolerance to, and eventually you don't notice how sugary it is, but
Mm-hmm.
your energy level is like all of a sudden inflated because you're eating all this fucking sugar all the time. I don't want to come across like I hate this album because I don't 100 gex, but I mean I was just saying more in context of the Charlie album. I feel like 100 gex is a lot of uncontrolled energy, whereas the Charlie album is a lot of focused, harnessed energy, which you get on tracks like I would say I finally understand the propulsion of that. Claws, obviously, I think is probably the most 100 Gexy thing on here. I don't know how many are the Dylan Brady productions. I don't have. I should probably bring up the ROIM page. Well, it doesn't tell me who produced what on that anyway. But
Um, Dylan
vision.
Brady.
Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, Dylan Brady did Claws to answer your question. He also
I know.
did.
I know he did Claws. Did he only do Claws, or did he do anything else on the album?
He did Anthems.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anthem's probably one of the. I said in my review that the second half was like the final third was a little weaker. I would like to retract that statement. I'm going to cross it out in my review just because I hadn't listened to the second half as much when I wrote that review, and I will say that anything that said that Visions is weaker than anything is fucking stupid because Visions is top 3 on the album, perfect way to end the album. I know we're just kind of skipping all around, and that's kind of doing it a disservice because it is incredibly well sequenced. It's
Mm-hmm.
super fucking tight, 11 tracks. I would not change the sequencing of anything. I think it begins and ends perfectly, and the ending feeds into the beginning very well, which adds to the replayability of it. Like the noisy way, I got pictures in my mind, feeds back into Pink Diamond, I
Mm-hmm.
would say, sort of, the refrains.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And you need that like break in the middle after 7 years where like it's a little more, it's just a touch more mellow. Songs are just as great, but you kind of need the, the enemy. I finally understand, C 2.0 party for you, stuff like that. I'm going to ride for C 2.0 so hard because that song, oh, like about 2 days ago, really, really, really clicked with me. I already liked it, but it really clicked with me. Especially following I Finally Understand. Those are like a perfect pairing, those two songs. Just the way she takes Click and like that refrain from Click. And it's that refrain from Click is so relevant because the whole point of that song is just like, essentially feeling good like with your friends. And, you know, if like a lot of us, if you haven't physically seen your friends, in a long time, that song really, really not only hurts, but is just wonderful to sing along to. And like the I miss them every night, like little bit with like the chopped up like click, 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 click in the background, like that's beautiful stuff. So I fucking love that song.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. I think the way she uses the click sample is sort of a interesting comment or use of like nostalgia for the recent past of like sampling yourself from like your last album and then like on your next album sort of thing. And so recent, like you just put out your last album. That also touches on the feeling of you kind of just saw your friends maybe in terms of you saw them the past couple weeks, months, whatever. It hasn't been that long, but it feels like it's been forever because you've
Right,
been
because
wait
you're inside.
like that beat does an incredible job of like it uses the click sample as like a memory, and that the instrumental sort of is like your memories, which is what Charlie's articulating on, is that feeling of just not being able to hang out with your friends, not being able to see your friends, your family, whatever, because you're in your quarantine, this situation of isolation, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And coming again like a perfect pairing with I Finally Understand, which clicked for me a few days ago, I believe, because when it was the third single, it did not hit me nearly as immediately as Forever or even Claws. I was like, this is good, but it's not super great. It was the first indication where I was like, maybe she peaked by putting out Forever as the first single, but no, it just took a second for it to settle in with me. Lyrically, one of the stronger songs on the album, I think. Um, she's still kind of painting in broad, simple strokes, but she's talking about universal experiences in a way that I think is more effective for her to talk about them in that plain sort of way. And just it's about coming to a realization. And who hasn't come to a realization about something? And it's like her realizing her situation or our collective situation and how little she can do about it, I guess. That's what I get out of that song. But it's like still pushing forward because you don't have any other choice. And like the instrumental is sort of like it's very propulsive, very forward. It kind of reminds me of like a racing game with its sort of forward moving tempo. And I feel like that's like you're still pushing forward, even though you realize you can't do anything about where life is right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You nailed that. That's like really, and the whole like my therapist said I hate myself, all that stuff. That's definitely one of the stronger songs lyrically, and feed come like every song builds off the one that preceded it so well. I mean, we talk about Claws. I mean, this is dumb, but like Claws gave me like an I really like you kind of vibe, which of course inevitable discussion point comparing those two artists. But
Is it just because of the I like repetition?
yeah, it was that kind of like there was like a it sounds stupid, but there's like a purity to Claws. Like there's like an not innocence, but like just a very like wholesomeness about that song. Like you're not really describing, like you use like everything about the person is that kind of thing. 7 years though, 7 years is right there with Visions and Forever for me. 7 years, Visions and Forever are the top three. I don't have any one particular favorite, but 7 years is fucking. And I don't know how that wasn't a single. That hasn't been a single yet because I just feel like that song should be huge.
The second verse on 7 Years is probably my favorite moment on the album, single moment on the album.
Yeah.
I really, really love you for life. The way she comes into that is so beautiful, and it's just mind blowing. And then the outro is first of all, pretty much every track has an amazing outro, which is just part of what you were saying about how every track feeds into each other really nicely, and it works together really well as a whole piece. The outros are just otherworldly. She's always had really great outros. Like I remember even back to Nuclear Season had a really cool little outro to it. And but they've become more and more expansive. Like the last album, the self-titled had several of those, and now they're a bigger part than ever of her music. I'd say the A.G. Cook tracks,
Yeah.
that's definitely a huge part of his style. like thinking back to probably the first Charli song that, aside from Nuclear Season, that really blew me away was Backseat with Carly.
Yep.
And speaking of, and that had an incredible outro too, where he basically chops up the sample of a sample from the song, and with the whole Carly, my fingers run through his hairline, and juxtaposes it and everything. He does a lot of that sort of thing with the vocal mixing on this album, which, by the way, is phenomenal. Some of the stuff they do with Charli's voice on this album is just remarkable. And to think that it was put together in 6 weeks, the levels of detail and layers to pretty much everything, the outros, the vocal mixing, for people who say like the songwriting isn't here on this album, like, go fuck yourself. It sounds like 2 years was spent on this album. Because, I mean, I want to make a real hot take statement right now. This is the best album I've heard since Blonde. And it sounds like almost as much time went into this as Blonde. Like, if you told somebody that, if you didn't tell somebody the circumstances of this album, I guess it would lose a lot of its character and power if you didn't know that it was created about and during a quarantine. But you would also think that it took like a typical year or two to produce, I think, in terms of how well constructed it is and how great it sounds.
Yeah, I would have thought that she had been working on this before she dropped her last album. Because the last album took her a while because of, the leaks, and then the, all the different, singles that she dropped, and so on and so forth. So like the build up for the last album it took, about a year and a half, versus like this album was just so sudden and of the moment, and yet it sounds. I mean, the last album was incredible, but this sounds even better. You know what I mean? That is a testament to Charli. It's a testament to A.G. Cook, Dylan Brady, the whole production team. A.G. Cook does 8 songs of the 11 on this, according to the credits. So he definitely had a huge hand in this record. And you're right, all the outros are crazy good. I think another one of my favorite moments is the "Party for You" outro. That is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, that could, in the right moment, that could definitely bring me to tears if it was a certain point. Because that outro was ridiculous, and that whole song being about how she wishes she could spend a moment with you, and just wishing you could spend any moment with a person that you really care about. That's what I project onto that song. And the way it chops up her voice at the end, and then just the "Party for You" refrain keeps going, and then her background vocals kind of soar in, and then it's just she comes in with another refrain, and then it just keeps building on itself, and that's a great way to close out the more slower introspective part of the album, with the "I Finally Understands" and the "C 2.0" "Party for You." That run they're very similar songs, topically, I think. And then
I would argue that "Detonate" through to that is probably that's the whole middle of the album is more on the introspective side.
Yeah, Detonate definitely gonna get slept on because it comes after 7 years, but you can't sleep on that song.
And then yet another great outro. I really like the imagery she paints with her lyrics on that song. I mean, some might think the explosive theme is a little corny, but I think she carries it off well. And yeah, that was one of my early favorites on first listen, actually, before the stuff that I wasn't as into C 2.0 or "Party for You" or Anthems. Yeah, Anthems is the only one that I'm not crazy about at this point, and even then I probably will be tomorrow. And that song is still a very, very good song.
Anthems is definitely you could throw 100 gex on it, and that would fit perfectly. I mean, obviously, Dylan Brady doing that one, but that definitely has more of the deconstructed club sound, very glitchy. That definitely is a challenge. I was talking. A friend of mine knows how much I love this album, and he doesn't listen to Charli. And he said that he apparently Anthems was trending on Twitter or something like that. I don't know. I didn't see it, but he said that he listened to a song and he was like, "Yeah, this is not for me." And I was like, "Well, you probably picked the worst song on the album to jump into." But yeah, great song.
Again, I don't want to say that's a bad song whatsoever. It's
Oh
just
no, amazing
feeling.
No,
The
I fucking love that song. That song immediately registered for me. I think the only one that didn't, and I don't think, actually, I don't know. I think everything did immediately register with me. I think maybe like Enemy didn't like smack me in the face on the first listen, but it's still a really fucking great song.
Enemy's a kind of a weird choice for a single over 7 years, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the next single.
7 years just has that massive hook and just like I feel like you could turn that I feel like that song would go great at like a concert or something if there ever is going to be live music. But yeah,
Yeah,
like that.
our live music episode with Trav that we'll be doing, where we
It,
talk about the thing we used to do where we would go to places and see people play music with other people around us, which will be a weird.
it's a crazy concept.
Yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about this album. I don't. My only fear is that I burn myself out on it from listening to it too much, because I said it was the best album I've heard since Blonde. The thing about Blonde was a slow burner. This is the absolute opposite of that, and then I knew how much I love this immediately, and I'm kind of afraid that I'll just over listen to it and then not want to listen to it for a while. So
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think one thing that I've been doing outside of listening to this is listening to just a lot of great pop albums in this vein, and that kind of like scratches, that can scratch the same itch. So I think that that's.
what do you recommend? Like, what are your recommendations for that?
I mean, outside of Charlie's catalog, I actually think this is a really cool companion piece. I think like I had not listened to Number One Angel in a while, but that album's still fucking great. I mean, I think like my first thing would be okay, 100 Gex, but I think that Hannah Diamond's album from last year is something that I think you haven't listened to. I'm trying to think of things that you haven't listened to.
Yeah, I have not. Hannah Diamond. No.
Yeah, Hannah Diamond's album last year, I think, is still really immediate. It might be a slow burn for you because her vocals might not be your thing, but I think that's a personal preference. But Hannah Diamond's album last year was great. I loved it. I think, I don't know. I think like Dorian Electra's album last year was really good as well. There's definitely something there. I'm thinking of one more. I actually listened to this EP last night by the artist name is Liz. It's from EP from 2014. It doesn't necessarily sound like this album, but it's really fucking good, and I will send you it because I think it.
Definitely send that over.
Yeah. Also the cover is hilarious. But that's all. Those are some recommendations. I'll think of other ones. I'm on the spot right now. I'm trying to think of other ones that have a similar vibe to this. A lot of bubblegum bass and like albums in this instrumental style don't necessarily have the same like lyrical things. Like they're a lot more like of what the.
I would assume this is an outlier lyrically.
Yeah, this
very
is
much
lyrically. Yeah.
I need to talk to Decibel, I guess, because I don't know shit about bubblegum bass or PC music really, except for A.G. Cook. So
I mean, I've been listening to a lot of that lately, and there are still like Hannah Diamond's album definitely I think would have some overlap, but there's like it depends on the artist, like some artists are going to be very like brash and confident, like there was this like Slater, not the slow and reverbed YouTuber. There's an artist like Slater. It's like with 3 Ys, and she's kind of like a modern day like Britney Spears filtered through a PC music lens. And her
heard her because I was trying to search up the slow and reverb Slater on Soulseek, and I got her shit by accident.
Yeah. No,
so I heard her and I was like, this is not what I was looking for.
That is very much. I loved her tape from last year, but that's a very like that's different. That's like brash and in your face sort of thing versus like this album. So yeah, like it's sort of instrumentally, like a lot of bubblegum bass is different from this topically, obviously because it wasn't made in quarantine, you know. But yeah, instrumentally, there will if this album is your shit instrumentally, and this goes for any listener. Like if this album is your shit instrumentally, there will be other bubblegum bass albums that are your shit. Like you'll like the Sophie album. You'll probably like the Gex. You'll probably Hannah Diamond, Dorian Electra, stuff like that.
Yeah. And in conclusion, if you feel the need to compare this to the Fiona Apple album and make women compete with each other, go fuck yourself. That's stupid. And the albums are not in competition. They're saying completely different things. They're about completely different things. They're both great. And just let women, like, just dumb. I did not read either comment box on RYM, nor will I ever. Like, I think I commented on the Charli comment box when it started, but then once it got such a high rating out the gate, I'm like, nope, never looking at that comment box.
Yeah, and that's the thing with any album with a lot of hype. There's going to be a shit ton of down rating done. Now, this is actually impressively maintained a very high rating with nearly 5,000 ratings at this point. So I'm holding out hope that it doesn't get crushed once it ends up on the charts and all like the metal heads, the technical death metal heads listen to it. So
right. This isn't symphonic death metal. 0.5 stars. Charli's Cookie Monster vocals are not good enough for a lot of people.
Not good enough. You know, we need extra long riffs. But yeah, amazing album. I mean, Forever works perfectly in the context of this. Like, there's really nothing. I have nothing bad I can say about this. I know you said it's your favorite album since Blonde. I think it's my favorite album since Die Lit. It's crazy good. It's crazy good.
Yeah. I think that it's better than Die Lit for me just because it works on both a lyrical and instrumental level, whereas Die Lit, for as much as I love it, very little on it lyrically resonates with me. I have to say, although Long Time does actually hit me lyrically,
Yeah.
or whatever. Like, I think that I don't know why of all, like, it's Cardi, you don't come to him for lyrics, but something about the main phrase on that song really does actually hit me very hard.
Yeah, no, that's a really and I think it's partly the instrumental too. It sounds kind of like nostalgic, and that song definitely has always that's easily one of my like 3 favorite Cardi songs. But yeah, Die Lit resonates with me a lot lyrically in the sense that there are like so many things about it that I've just walked around like repeating for the last like 2 years, and that like it means a lot to me in terms of like it came at a point in my life where I didn't know that I needed it, and it kind of like really hit me, and then I've just like played it nonstop for the last couple of years, and I anticipate the same thing happening with this album. I always need a Charli album because I'm a huge fucking fan of hers, but I didn't know I needed this, until she announced it a few weeks ago, and then boom, here it is, and it's better than I think either one of us could have possibly imagined.
Better than I could have hoped for, amazingly. And when you consider Forever was the lead single, that's a big fucking feat. Yeah, because Forever was a perfect song, and it's not even at this point. I'm pretty confident saying 7 Years and Visions might be just as good, if not better. Which is just flooring because I'm still finding new things to love about Forever. I've listened to that song more than any song this year, and I'm not even close to sick of it.
Yeah, no, I think I think it's crazy that my potential I mean this is gonna be album of the year, like for sure for me.
I can't say that because it comes out on June 1st.
Oh, right. Well, that's true. I mean, hey, it's been a heck of a year. It's really been a heck of a year.
I cannot believe we're getting a fucking Arm & Hammer album after getting this Charli album. And what have we gotten here? Like, we've gotten fucking the Nudie album. We already did a recap of the year episode. We don't need to, like, that's pretty lazy content.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
this year. This
album came out on the same day as a lot of other great music, and I think that's what makes it cool. So I think that's like, I think I'll always remember like listening to this and be like, oh shit, this is incredible. Like, this is better than the last albums I listened to. You know, so that's part
Big
of it.
release days are always cool. Oh yeah, shout out real quick to the Conway Big Ghost album. Another great project out of Griselda, who's been having just an incredible fucking run. And Big Ghost, I was not crazy about his Rolodex album earlier in the year, Carpe Noctem, although the instrumentals were typically great. It felt like one rapper pretty much the whole time, even though it was like 7 or 8. And it just felt like the same fucking dude rapping about the same shit.
Mm-hmm.
And Conway has the style of that same rapper that was on Carpe Noctem, but it's like pretty much just tough New York coke rap. You listen to Griselda, you know what he raps about and brags and shit. But he does it so well, and he's been doing it at a higher level for about the past year or so. Like if you've heard the Fire in the Booth freestyle or Lulu with Alchemist, you know how good he's been. And he's still at that level on this EP. And these are probably the darkest instrumentals I've heard out of Big Ghost yet. There's a lot of rock influence to it. I would say it sounds a little bit like some of the rockier stuff DJ Muggs has worked on, although not the actual rock stuff DJ Muggs has worked on. A lot of electric guitar, just a lot of rock style drums, and it's kind of different than anything Conway's rapped over in the past, and I highly recommend it. Like, it's gotten kind of a mixed reaction. I don't know why. I think Conway's ridiculously consistent, and I come to his product, you should know what you're getting into, and I don't see what he's delivering on this that's different than anything else. It's just at a higher level with slightly different instrumentals. And the thing is, I haven't heard anybody complain about the instrumentals. They've been like, oh, rapping like isn't as good. And like, no, it's just as good. And so that
people
early album, it was kind of a tonal shift, but really, really good shit. I guess now it's up to Ben. I guess now we're all just waiting on a Benny project because we've had 2 great Conway EPs and Pray for Paris, which is probably my favorite West Side release at this point. So,
yeah, and I think it's Griselda's been batting 1,000 lately. So they're anything they put out, I haven't heard it, to be honest with you, because I've just been listening to a lot of other stuff, and I've had it in the queue. I fucking love Griselda, so I'm going to get to it this week for sure, but I'm sure it's really good. I have full confidence in that. I just want to say fuck RYM real quick for the down rating. For down rating the Young Lean album, which is amazing. I know you don't care about it, but it's amazing, and I did not expect to be blown away. I mean, I fuck with Young Lean for sure, but I did not expect to be hit that hard by his album right after I listened to Charli's. So those 2 albums were 2 incredible albums that were dropped on the same day. And fuck RYM for downvoting it. It was at like 3.8 something, and now it's at like 3.5 because people on the charts don't like music that isn't fucking. I mean, I'm looking at 2, 3, 4 on the charts, and it's all technical death metal, avant-garde metal, and psychedelic rock, avant-garde metal. So I'm sure those albums are cool, but also fuck you, RYM.
Yes, fuck RYM as a set label and crew.
And a crew. Saying first of all, I just want to say fuck you, RYM, for making me do this shit.
Yeah, I cannot say that I care about Young Lean. I like Kyoto. I've grown to like Kyoto. That's a brilliant song. I will probably listen to this album because literally everyone else in our musical circle loves it. Yeah. I feel like I'm the only holdout who's like, oh, I don't care about his sad boy shit. So I should probably get over myself and listen to it.
I mean, you're great about being like, hey, this isn't my thing, so I'm just not gonna like, trash it for no reason. Like, I think that's like a thing that a lot of people on the website don't do. I don't know. Like, it has grown to be my aesthetic over the last like couple years as I've gotten further into, like Scandinavian cloud rap and stuff. So it was really not a huge leap for me to love this album because I had already loved Young Lean projects in the past, or had grown to love Young Lean projects in the past. So yeah.
I'd just like to say there has not been a whiter, more pretentious sentence on this podcast said by you. I've probably said more whiter, pretentious things than it has grown to be my aesthetic since I've listened to Scandinavian cloud rap.
And that is the level of nerddom that we're dealing with here, okay?
But yeah, to your point about not listening to shit just because it's not my thing. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna go listen to like technical death metal and be like, oh, these vocals suck. This is too technical for me. Like, I'm not gonna go do that. Like, and that's why I don't get why like a metal fan would listen to a Charlie album or a Young Lean album and give it 0.5 just to be like, fuck this pop bullshit
Right.
or isn't music. Like, you know, you're going to hate it going into it, and you're not coming into it with an open mind. You're not giving it a good faith listen. Like, just don't waste your time. Like, is your time that worthless?
Right. Like hate listening anything to me is a big waste of time.
I mean, there are hate listens that are worthwhile. Like, we're eventually going to listen to the Bill Cosby Weed Carrier album from the Casanati. And there's, like, hate listens like that, where it's like, yeah. But that's different than just, like, going around, like, listening to shit that other people like so you can hate on it to try and diminish their enjoyment or downvote the rating on a hobbyist website. Like,
right. Like this is gonna make me feel better because this album is no longer in the top couple albums from the year or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. I never understood that. Like let people enjoy the things that they like. Yeah, and like you don't have to show up to the party and be like, "Got him. This isn't good." Like, guess what, guys? You know.
And I would just like to reiterate, I don't really care about placement on the charts. I like the charts as a tool to find new shit. So I like when stuff I've never heard of gets placed on the charts, and it's kind of annoying to me when stuff I don't care about is all over the charts, like technical death metal. But it has every right to be there. I'm not going to be mad at it. Mm-hmm. But I also don't care if something I don't like is number one. Like, I might groan if Taylor Swift's Lovers was number one for last year or something. But I'd get over it. I wouldn't go downrate it. Okay.
Right, because it's not because of the
Taylor Swift album. Because I 0.5 to a lot of Taylor Swift shit.
Sure.
That would be the one instance in which I've done that. So I'm not going to front. But
yeah, no, I think downrating music when it's not obviously horrendous is just a waste of time. I will say before we move on to Officer Ricky, I will say you should listen to the Yves Tumor album because I describe it to my friends who I've gotten a couple of my friends into it who are non-music nerds, and I've told them it's like the Gambino album this year, but good. So
well, I still haven't heard the Gambino album either, and I've heard very wildly mixed things on that, and it sounds like something I would enjoy. He has a very wild, like, I generally dislike his music more than I like his music. And Awaken My Love was again, Jermaineson always used to say, he had Because the Internet at a 5. I found that album to be kind of insufferable, but very well made. And I thought there were 2 or 3 great songs on it, but there was just like, the whole thing was just way too much. And Awaken My Love is a good cover band album, but it doesn't sound anything like his own personality whatsoever, and it sounds like he's doing shtick. It sounds like when Jamie Foxx did Ray Charles, sort of, but not, obviously not like Ray Charles music, but it's just like he's trying to do Parliament Funkadelic. Like, that's essentially, he's putting on his George Clinton clothes.
I agree with that. And the new one is all over the place. It's a thing where I wouldn't begrudge anyone for liking it or disliking it. I'm firmly in the I think it's mid camp. I think there's a couple songs I like, but I wouldn't. If you liked it, I'd be like, oh, cool. If you disliked it, I'd be like, I can see why you don't like it. So I feel like there's 2 sides to it. I'm very much like, it's mid. I was hoping for more. There's like a couple songs I like. 21 Savage has a great verse on it. But I think the Yves Tumor album is like a much better. It's not the same thing, obviously doing different things, but there are spades of it that remind me of the Gambino and how much more I love it than the Gambino, because the Yves Tumor is probably going to be in my top 10 of mid-year. But yeah.
So it's Yves, not Yves, because I was listening to a previous episode of ours where I mispronounced like every other fucking word. And ever have to talk about this album in public to real life people, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it right. It's Yves, not Yves. I think Yves.
I think it's Yves. Now I might be way off, but I think it's Yves. That's my take. If I'm wrong, I would love somebody to yell at me that I'm wrong, because he's
By the way, the most embarrassing thing I've ever said on this podcast, and this is more embarrassing than you saying your aesthetic has become Scandinavian cloud rap or whatever that was, and I asked if there were any Dilla beats on like Water for Chocolate.
Yes, you did say that. Yeah.
I deserve for that. That was I literally stopped and shook my fucking head when I re-listened to that when Kittenpuke put it up.
This is an incredible detour of embarrassing things that we've said on the podcast.
Speaking of embarrassing things, what's more embarrassing than being a rapper who's made your reputation off selling cocaine, including having songs called Rich Off Cocaine, and then having it be outed that you're a corrections officer?
Hell yeah, and then somehow the career arc.
Yes, Officer Ricky Ross, William Leonard Roberts IV, is the rapper we'll be discussing today. As I said, we used to do this a lot on the podcast, and I hope to do it a lot more. I want to get into Currency at some point over the summer, which would be like a literal 3-part episode. And we're already breaking these regular episodes up into multiple parts, so that would be like 6 parts. But
Currency and Gucci would just take years off our lives. We'd be getting fucking gray, long, drooping beards by the time we're done with those podcasts.
The thing is, I actually know who I want to have on for Gucci. Hurricane / Sophia from RYM has been doing Gucci's entire discography, not skipping a single tape in her listening log. She's only up to 2008.
Wow. Hella impressed.
We can do Gucci. So we'll be doing that when I turn 40.
Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
With Rick Ross, I was thinking because, to be honest with you, the Port of Miami Trilla and Rise to Power trilogy there, I feel like isn't worth talking about much. Do we want to just like say a few words and then go to deeper than rap?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at those two. I have not listened to any of these in quite some time. I think there was a period where I went through and tried to do his whole discography for RYM reviews. So I've heard them all once in full, which was a waste of time because they all have like one good song apiece. Hustlin' Remix on Port of Miami.
Yeah.
Although actually I don't mind Cross That Line was not a terrible single. Mainly because I like the Akon hook. There are certain Akon hooks I like. I think you can just chalk it up to nostalgia. Just take a few years away from anything, and something that annoyed you will grow to be something you're fond of.
Right.
Because I was annoyed with Akon at the time. Although I think that I found T-Pain to be the more annoying of the two. This was back when you were in diapers, that they were all over the radio.
I grew up in the. I was a young kid in this era. I remember this era. So I got into rap music.
It's also interesting how much of a Jay-Z project that Ross was out the gate. I guess Jay-Z executive produced this album. Obviously, Jay-Z was on the Hustlin' remix. Interesting that Jeezy was part of that song, too, because they would have their beef for a while. Really not much interesting about the music on here. He's super fucking basic. He's basically doing Jeezy or Gucci, depending. Mostly Jeezy. He doesn't have any sense of humor, though, really. His jokes are really flat. No personality. Like, eventually he would try and, like, he would incorporate, like, a lot of other, like, he would never have his own personality so much as he would borrow from other rappers to create, like a, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like a mosaic personality almost. Like, he would take from Biggie, he would take from Gucci, he'd take from Jeezy. Here he's mostly just taken from Jeezy.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, it sounds like such a 2006 album. Like, it's just all the, it's not like a terrible album, but it's not like, it's just so bland. And I think that, like, even the beats that, like, you know, really hit hard, like Rick Ross hadn't learned yet that he sounds amazing over, like, more opulent production. He hadn't grown into his character yet because it was his first album. And I think the first couple albums are him not realizing that he's, like, you know, great in a specific lane. He hadn't found that lane yet. He was still doing what a lot of other, you know, albums in 2006 in hip hop were doing. You know, it's like how much, you know, these mid 2000s trap beats, a lot of which sound dated just because of where we are now. Like, and he's just yelling over them in a sense, and you're just like, this is not really getting me hyped outside of the hustling versions and the Akon song.
Right, and the Akon song's not really hype either. Yeah. It's just, like, slow, down tempo, like almost like a trap ballad sort of thing. Like, and everything here is slow tempo anyway because he only Ross really, for a long time, only had one way to flow. And occasionally he would find another one, and then he would beat that into the ground. He never, like, honestly, the first one of his albums I can remember that had a lot of varieties and weight and flow was Mastermind. And they're like, and that one, no way, we'll get to that when we get to that. But, yeah, this is, I see no reason to ever listen to this album when you can just listen to Thug Motivation 101.
Yeah, that's
you want the same experience because he's just trying to do that. He's trying to do for Miami what Jeezy did for Atlanta. The beats are much less interesting. The two Hustlin' versions are the only reason you would ever listen to this. I mean, Hustlin' gave us Rick Ross. If he didn't have that single, he would have just been an anonymous. Like, he would have been in and out, really. Because anybody could have gotten that Akon song, and it would have just been thought of as an Akon song. Right. So, and that was the second single. So, but this was basically like Jay-Z was trying to break an artist. I don't think he was ever signed to like a J label. I don't know who his management was, but like I said, Jay-Z was an executive producer on this. This is one of his, like, Jay-Z was retired for 6 months, so he made some business investment sort of things. And Rick Ross was one of those business investments. And
yeah,
they worked together fairly consistently until, what was the last time they worked together?
Was it the, like, I'm trying to think of the album.
I mean, they were together on What's Free, and I guess you could consider that working together because Meek is Ross's artist.
Yeah.
That's the last time I remember. That's probably their best song together, honestly. And they've had mostly, I don't think they've had a bad song together. Like, we'll get into some other ones, too. Like, everything, honestly, as good as the Hustlin' remix is, I think pretty much all of their future songs are better.
I would agree, actually. The Hustlin' remix slaps, but, like, they raised their level, I think, almost each time that they linked up.
You can tell that Ross is a huge, genuine rap fan and rap nerd in that, like, for a lot of ways, like, you'll see this throughout his career, like, the way he pays homage to regional scenes, borrows regional legends for stuff, flows, etc. But the way he steps his game up whenever he's with Jay or Nas, like, he obviously has something to prove when he's on a track with either of them.
Yeah, absolutely. He is I think people just, may or may probably question that at first. Like, Rick Ross has, I think, even with the, quote unquote real rap fans over the years, Rick Ross has earned the respect of them for whatever that's worth. He's kind of grown in status as this, like, now he's like an OG, in the rap game. So, but to your point, you got to start somewhere. So I think the first 3 albums are like Rick Ross, like I said, struggling to find a lane. I don't think any of them are good. They obviously sound like an artist struggling to find their lane, and I don't think he really began to grow into himself until Deeper Than Rap.
Well, the second album isn't really. I think this was something that was one of those unauthorized shady label releases. It's got features from guys like Sin-K, who I assume was Jamon Hansu's character from the Steven Spielberg film Amistad. Big Duke, who doesn't love Big Duke?
Yeah.
Next, who's up. Noah from Animal Collective. And the only 2 features that actually are worth a shit on here are Clips and Scarface. So if you ever have any reason to want to listen to this, just find those 2 songs. I think these are old Ross verses that were stapled to some shitty fly-by-night labels, crappy roster of nobodies. So there's no reason to talk about this shit. Nodima has a funny review sheet on it. We can just move on.
Yep.
Trilla is, I gave it a 0.5, even though I think actually looking at it, it has more good songs than Port of Miami. So I think maybe I should flip those, because this has at least Manny Fresh song on it's pretty good.
Yep.
Payback Music's a classic. Luxury Tax is really fun. So that's 3 good songs as opposed to Port of Miami's 2.
Yeah, I actually agree with that 100%. It does have a 1 minute and 28-second DJ Khaled interlude, but what can you do? I forgot that R. Kelly was on this album. I was on this album a long time ago. Forgot that R. Kelly was on here. That's not going to age well. Maybach Music, though, I mean, you point about Jay again. Also, just starts the whole series. That would be a important track, even if it wasn't on a Ross album, because it started the whole Maybach Music series. So, yeah.
It was, and it also started his whole aesthetic, really, of the yacht rap, opulent, layered production, Justice League sound. Because a lot of the rest of this album is just glossy trap pop. of its time. Still feeling out his character, like you said, not entirely the lane that he would be known for driving in for most of his career. And he's gotten a little better as a rapper, but he's still nothing special. He's still lacking in personality. He's still not funny. He's still not Jeezy. Again, you really only need the singles from this. I guess the Manny Fresh song wasn't a single, and I don't think Ross and Manny Fresh have worked together very often, so that's worth hearing. But you can probably skip this as a full album. At least he kept it under an hour. Port of Miami was like 80 minutes.
Yeah, especially during the 2000s, I'm sure there was the implication to be like, hey, let's make this 73 minutes. Just because of that era of hip hop, let's bloat this thing to the roof.
And Luxury Tax, I would say, is kind of interesting in that it is a Justice League approximation of a DJ Khaled track that he would do with the Runners, one of those late 2000s posse cuts. Not as many people on it as you would, but it's got like Wayne, Jeezy would always be on those. Ross obviously was a fixture of those. Trick Daddy, because they would always have somebody regional on there for color. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's kind of, because those tracks would be a big part of Ross's, like, once he became a huge name, it was off of a lot of he was always on the Khaled remixes. So, but yeah, you can pretty much skip this one.
Yeah, maybe listen to like you said, the original Maybach music, just to get an idea of how that Rick Ross began to understand what his lane was.
Story behind the Maybach music beat is apparently Nas had that beat for Hope off Hip Hop Is Dead, but Jay-Z stole it from him. He outbid him for the beat. That's why Hope is an acapella.
Oh, interesting. See, this is the hip hop knowledge right here that we get on the podcast from Patrick, because I could not have told you that story.
I think that was like the last really like petty shit they did to each other. Well, and yeah, honestly, they squashed the beef around that time too, because Black Republican is on Hip Hop Is Dead.
Yeah.
So they were still kind of getting at each other even up to when they decided they were friends.
It's an interesting little cat and mouse game.
And Maybach music would have been I don't know. I think the Can't Forget About You beat is the best thing will.i.am ever did. Although, did he do the beat for American Boy?
He did the beat for American Boy. That's the best thing he's ever done.
That's the best thing he ever did. The Can't Forget About You beat is the second best thing he ever did. But other than that, Maybach music would have been by far the best beat on Hip Hop Is Dead. And that would have sounded gorgeous with Chrisette Michele vocals. Shout out Chrisette Michele, who decided a great career path would be to be the alt R&B Stacey Dash and try and play Trump's inauguration. And did you hear about that?
I did not. I only know Chrisette.
Ooh, yeah, because I love Chrisette Michele.
Yeah.
Yeah, she made she decided that she was going to take the Candace Owens route, maybe. Oof. It's not good. Don't look it up.
I will not. I did not know that. I knew that she had a solo career, but I have never listened to a Chrisette Michele album. I just know her from a lot of good hooks that she's done over the years.
I've actually heard most of her albums. I haven't heard the most recent stuff because, like I said, that happened and it kind of killed my enthusiasm for her music. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Anyway, moving on. We actually will come. There is a great Rick Ross song, one or two great Rick Ross songs with Chrisette Michele that we'll get to eventually.
Yep.
But we're going to move on to Deeper Than Rap, the first Rick Ross album worth actually listening to in full, or really at all. Honestly, almost not a bad song on here.
Yeah, there's this album, it just kicks off with songs that still, I think, are awesome to this day. I mean, just the way that it comes in, and it was like, okay. Even from the cover art, you knew that, you can tell now with hindsight that, this was the start of, the Rick Ross character that really would work for him. I mean, Maybach music too. I mean, you could talk about that beat all day. I mean,
that's just like a symphony. It's just that might be the definitive Justice League beat right there. Actually, no, Maybach Music 3 is the definitive Justice League and the best Maybach music for sure. But we'll get to that when we get to Teflon Don. Yeah, I think the first 3 tracks on here are near perfect. Yacht Club is goofy as fuck. That's where Rick Ross calls himself the Militant Gilligan.
Never accuse Rick Ross of not being well read.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think he realizes that Gilligan was not like a particularly. He was kind of a goof. He was always getting like hit on the head with coconuts and shit. You can't really make him militant.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
Of the show, but he was like also a clown. I don't think. I know he just said it because it rhymes, but
it sounded cool hot in the headphones, you know.
It's a cool song. It's got Magazine on it as the token, and like MMG didn't exist yet. But Magazine, I guess, is like their token reggae guy. Usual Suspects is the first Nas Ross collab. It's really good. Ross admits he has diabetes on this song, which should have been a clue to his future health problems. That, and if you've ever seen him.
This also spawned Kevin Costner, which we don't need.
We really did not need Kevin Costner.
If you would like, forget like RC Cola Future. This is like the diet Future. This is like a 0 calorie Future. Like it's Kevin Costner is very, very shitty.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a generic brand soda, generic and flavorless enough to approximate Kevin Costner, and I can't. Yeah. Like Kirkland, Costco brand, no, too much flavor, too much personality. Kevin Costner, that much more indistinct. There are some dud songs on here, though, mainly near the end, because Ross after the first 2 albums would start putting out. He would do what every rapper does on a major label and have lady song portions. And his would mostly be really gross. This one only has 1 gross song, Face, which is about blowjobs and has the dumbest slang I've ever heard that somehow caught on, which cannot believe it fucking caught on. People are still saying this in 2020. Stop saying Face in 2020. We could hashtag that. Kittenpuke can make that fucking go viral or something. I don't know. He's also our social media manager in addition to our producer. So he's going to make sure that goes viral. Bossy Lady is pretty stupid too, because Neo pretty much does nothing for me outside of Back Like That. I think that he's never really added to. Actually, he had one of the 2 listenable songs on Kingdom Come too. I think
Neo around this time was the hook guy, so he was going to be on this album for sure, and he can just turn anything into like a lady song. To your point, so yeah.
Neo had a great hook on the next Ross album. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But everything other than those, even like the Robin Thicke song is creepy in hindsight because Robin Thicke is creepy in hindsight. We should have known. And like I'm pretty sure that I don't remember the song super well, but I'm pretty sure the whole theme of it is lay back and enjoy it. Which, given that between Robin Thicke making blurred lines and Rick Ross having that put a Molly in her drink and she ain't even know it, really. Just kind of problematic as fuck in hindsight. It's not a song I ever really listened to begin with, but it was like Robin Thicke could engineer. Like he was around for a long ass time. I remember in the early 2000s, like you were like 2 years old, there was a commercial for Gateway Computers, and it had a song called "Be All Right" on it by an artist called Thicke. The industry has been trying to put Robin Thicke on us since like 1999 in commercials for computers. So this dude has been doing his thing for like 20 years. He's like really seasoned at putting together a song. It's just a shame that Blurred Lines was the song of his that blew up. And I'm glad it blew up in his face and that like it's considered embarrassing now and they lost the lawsuit for that, right? No, they didn't actually.
No, I don't think they did lose the lawsuit for that.
Well, I mean, I hope for like I don't wish ill on Pharrell or anything, but I hate that song. I really hate that song.
Yeah.
But it would be a bad precedent for sampling, I think, if they lost the lawsuit. So I take that back. Anyway, the Robin Thicke song sucks. That's another bad song on here, actually. It's well put together, but Ross lady songs are never great, and it was never going to get played on the radio because Ross lady songs never get played on the radio either. Mm-hmm. Like, that's why I don't get why these rappers always have these fucking songs, like these lady songs.
They're obviously like
on the off chance they get played on the radio. Like this is like 75% of Wale albums are these type of songs.
And I think it maybe be a little different now, but around this time, like you like part of the quote unquote like major label rap experience is like you had to put a slower jam for the ladies because the ladies don't like to listen to anything but the slower music. You know what I mean? Like it's that sort of thing. So I think it was really industry bullshit. I think because you only are going to assume that what like women aren't going to like Maybach Music Part Two. Like I don't understand the justification for that. But yeah, gotta
I
tap
guess
into the market.
early precursor to algorithm music.
Yeah, it was. That was like the version of algorithm music for that time. You know,
Well,
before like Khalid was a thing.
one of the important things about this period for Raw. Sorry, I'm outside. I just got a little breeze. Um, was that he was beefing with 50 Cent at this period. That was another thing that what kind of defined him was that he was probably the first major artist to go in beefing with 50 and come out better, which is both a testament to the fact that Ross is a smarter artist and he got credit for it first, and that 50 was kind of on the downward spiral.
hmm And what, '09? So 50 was already, we were already talking before I self destruct or something like that. I mean, he was making bad music for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the beef, it's like it definitely informs some of the music here, the first track and the last track. If you actually have the last track on the album and the bonus last track, if you have the bonus version, if you have the deluxe version, he actually gets together a bunch of typical people you would have diss 50 Cent. He had Fat Joe, Game, and Ja Rule in 2009, which was, I'm sure that cost him a lot of money. I bet Ja Rule probably did it for free. Ja Rule may have actually paid Rick Ross to be on the song. It's a hot fucking mess, actually. Like, yeah, you should probably not get the deluxe version of this album because the other like, there's one really good track called Cigar Music, but then the other two are that song. It's a remix of the intro track with all the anti 50 guys, and Game doesn't even diss 50 on it, which is weird because there was a period where no matter what you asked Game to do on a verse, he would somehow turn it into dissing 50 Cent. Like, you could ask him to rap about his childhood, it would end up being dissing 50 Cent and G Unit. You could ask him to do a song for the strip club. It ends up dissing 50 Cent and G Unit. That's actually what happened on Doctor's Advocate. Like, he had a strip club song, and he ends up crying, "You do it if my name was Dre." And it's like, what? No one wants to hear this in the strip club. So it's weird that he got the one Game versus doesn't diss 50 Cent on his song dissing 50 Cent. And the other one's a song called "Shitting on Him" with Busta Rhymes and Birdman, which comment not required on that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you don't need the deluxe version. 14 tracks is the perfect length for this, and the first and last two tracks are super mean. They'd shown that he'd actually put a lot of effort into improving his rap ability. He's still slow, but he's not basic anymore. He has some actual jokes on here. His presence is like really improved. He's not relying on the beats nearly as much, and the beats are improved too. Like, Justice League is he realized that Justice League were the best house sound for him. And I mean, he would change it up to a degree on Teflon Don because then he would introduce the Lex Luger trap sound as opposed to and the some of the stuff here still feels a little bit like the Lady song, the Neo song, the Trina song. Those have really indistinct beats. The Dream song. The thing is, like, these feel like industry obligations of the time. Like, in addition to having the Lady songs, you also had a Dream song, which I guess kind of counts as a Lady song. And I like Dream, but all those songs ended up sounding the fucking same on those albums.
And they were all like they were close in proximity with each other on the track list. So it really doesn't help your case when you've got to like you put all your best songs on the album except for the closer. You put all your best songs on the album like at the top, and then you just have like in the back half it's bogged down with like four of these songs that you don't need. Whereas if you just took like if you left one of those in there, like you left the Dream song in there, fine, cool. But you don't need the Trina, you don't need the Robin Thicke, like take those out, and you still have your obligatory like slower radio jam for the time. But this is what record labels do, I guess.
Well, in addition to the 50 stuff, this was also around when the whole revelation about him being a CO dropped, and I kind of feel like he consciously stepped up his everything, his music game, because he realized if he was going to survive this controversy, he had to be a better artist.
Yep. Absolutely, because
he couldn't coast on novelty singles anymore.
right, he had to like really be like, okay, like I'm about this rap shit. Like that's my MO, you know, and I'm gonna rise above all the CO talk with my music.
All right, moving on. Real quick, there were 2 mixtapes before Teflon Don. One is, I'm just going to say, I'm sure you haven't heard it. I reviewed it on RYM. The only reason I've heard it is because I had a friend at work who, at my job at the time, who wanted me to find it for him. And it's like a bodega mixtape. It's called A Timeless Audemars Piguet. I don't know how you pronounce that collection. Yeah. It's got a really terrible mixtape cover with Photoshop of Rick Ross and Audemars with a lot of lens flare. We're talking like 4 different lens flares here.
This is some real J.J. Abrams. This is J.J. Abrams.
Lens flare on his watch. Lens flare on what I assume is either blunt smoke or snot. So the only reason this is relevant at all is because it's the only Rick Ross release that has Mafia Music 2 on it with Chrisette Michele, and that is one of the best fucking Rick Ross songs. Try and find it without the intro. I think this was originally intended as the Teflon Don intro because the version that's on YouTube is like 5 minutes long and has like a 1.5-minute long like newsreel intro to it. It feels like and there's like an ad-lib he ad-libs for like a minute at the end of it too. It feels like an album intro. But I don't know why it wasn't like on Teflon Don, except maybe he didn't want to repeat any features. It's really, he raps hard as fuck, like for like 2.5 minutes on it. It's one of his best rap. It was his best rap performance to date at that point. It's also got the Angels remix on it, which I think you can find on the Diddy Dirty Money album, but that's also another great. This was around the time that Diddy really started grooming him to be like the new Biggie, and they were doing a lot of songs together. So that's another personal favorite of mine. I also really love the Lupe Fiasco version of Angels. That's on the Enemy of the State tape. So I don't think there's any other release that has those for Ross. This thing is like 90,000 minutes long though, and it has a bunch of like 7 Birdman features. There's no reason to listen to this in full, but find Mafia Music too.
Anything with that many Birdman features is a tough sell.
Now, this next one you might have heard though, the Albert Anastasia EP.
Yeah, I have heard that one. First of all, great mixtape cover art. I mean, the font. What is going on?
Is that the Goosebumps font? Oh no.
Yeah, I heard this a couple years ago. I remember it not being bad. I mean, it's got the first version of BMF on it. So that's probably the most notable thing to come out of this tape. It also has Cool G. It has Cool G rap on it.
Yeah, minus Gucci. It's basically a dry run for Teflon, for the trap parts of Teflon Don, and really I don't have a whole lot of time for this tape because you can listen to MC Hammer with Gucci and BMF on Teflon Don. Super High you can listen to on Teflon Don. The Birdman and Trey Songz album you can skip on Teflon Don. You don't need to skip it here. Really, the only song that's essential here is Knife Fight with Cool G Rap, and another little bit of rap trivia. I'm pretty sure that Ross wanted to sign to MMG. I know there was some he wanted to sign a few older rap legends to MMG, and it never happened. And I think this was supposed to be like his intro to getting him on the label, was this song Knife Fight, which is probably one of the more throwbacky tracks Ross has ever done. It's got like a very premier scratch on the hook. It's got a ton of energy to it. It's one of the better Cool G Rap late period verses you'll hear. And Ross is way more inspired on this than he is on any other track. It's the only one where he's not doing the yelling trap flow. And I like 300 Soldiers too, even though it's super dumb. It kind of reminds me of 100 Black Coffins off the Django Unchained soundtrack, which is a great Ross Lucy. It's much better than this song. It's probably just because he's yelling a number. Kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, if you like Rick Ross yelling over trap beats, you get that and the Teflon Don singles. So it's not super essential. But I remember people did like it at the time, and it did do a good job hyping the album. So find the Cool G Rap song if you can.
For sure. That's definitely one of the more slept on Ross songs.
So and now for probably up until recently, what most people would agree is his best album, Teflon Don.
Yeah, this thing is just hit after hit, and like you said, except for the obligatory Trey Songz track, on the rest of this, I still love this album. Like this, the way it comes on with. I mean, I'm not a star. Like I said, I remember saying this in our fall off episode a few weeks back. But I'm Not a Star came out, BMF came out, and then a bunch of other songs came out that sounded like those songs. And I don't just mean like, if like Falcavelli came out, before this. Like I'm not discrediting the influence that album had, but I just mean people were trying to do what Ross was doing on those songs. It wasn't just like hey, it's a Lex Luger beat. Like people were trying to sound like Ross. And there were a million. The I'm Not a Star had remixes, all that stuff. That was a beat that people would freestyle over. I remember. Freemason with Jay, I listened to it last night again. Still a great collab. Like you said, they always bring out the best in each other. And then Maybach Music 3, the Maybach Music 3 Live Fast, Die Young two-parter. Are there two better songs back-to-back on a Rick Ross album, like, ever? Because I don't think.
Honestly, yeah, the only thing, like, the first six songs, I would say, are pretty much perfect, with the exception of the fact that I really think CeeLo overdoes it on Tears of Joy. I think Ross's verse is great. I think the beat is incredible. That's like No ID in a fucking zone. But I think CeeLo is like, I get why Ross went with that, and CeeLo went like full tilt, fucking overblown soul mode. But I would have rather anybody else said. I don't know. I've never been a huge CeeLo fan, and the CeeLo I do like is pretty much Goody Mob and a handful of Gnarls Barkley songs.
Mm-hmm.
Like CeeLo, once he went solo, does not do it for me. So that's the only speed bump on there, really, until you get to Super High, which I love, but I really wish he'd done the remix with Currency and Wiz on the album, because I think that's even better.
Yeah,
but it's still perfect.
Yeah, it makes sense that like the Currency and Wiz weren't on the album, I guess, just because Neo is the big name. I don't think Wiz was.
Well, Neo's also on the Currency and Wiz version too.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, as in, like, I guess the remix. It would make sense that like it wasn't on the album, because did the remix come after? I'm ignorant when the remix came out.
After.
Okay, yeah, because I would imagine it.
No, it came after Albert Anastasia, because this was on Albert Anastasia, but then before Teflon Don.
Oh, okay. So it would have been.
Yeah.
It would have been realistic to expect it to be on the album. Okay. Yeah. Well.
It's a different Diddy and Trey song than was on the EP, by the way. I still skip both. The thing is, there's Diddy and Ross have a few fun songs together on Rich Forever, I think. Maybe one song on Rich Forever that I like. But I don't know. I never really cared about them together. And Trey Songz, aside from Successful, I don't care about ever. So I think it's interesting that you pointed out Live Fast are together, and everybody notices MC Hammer and BMF are right back to back. So yeah. I think I never noticed there's probably a point in the symmetry of putting the two most opulent tracks back together, like the Justice League and the Kanye track back to back, and then the Luger tracks back to back. Like this kind of mirror images. Yeah. This is a deliberately sequenced album.
Really, yeah, it's the most airtight. It's the most airtight Rick Ross album. I mean, 11 tracks for a Rick Ross album is pretty compact. And like I said, I don't like the Trey Songz hook, but that's pretty much the only thing that I don't like. I mean, the CeeLo was I can't say I remember it very well, so that probably speaks to like it's meh. But this is, I mean, Maybach Music 3, T.I.'s verse on that's ridiculous.
Oh, Eric sounds hates on that shit. The way he comes into that. Yeah. His flow on that is pure liquid. Jadakiss is incredible on it. Like they all are They all have like three of the most iconic voices in rap, and they sound perfect over that beat. The way the beat, like it's like Maybach 2 was a symphony. This is even more lush and opulent. The way it evolves, and then it builds up with like the drum break for Ross to come in, and Ross is almost like an outro on his own song, but like every has like such gruffness and gravity to it that you still remember him at the end, even after those incredible Jada and T.I. verses.
Yeah, he's doing like ad-libs and shit, like before he even comes in. Like he's clearing his throat. He sounds, the best Rick Ross songs sound effortlessly cool. And that is That is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, because he just sounds completely and 100% like in his pocket. And that song and Live Fast Die Young, man, like that hook is just like that. It has the potential, I guess, to be grating, but especially listening to it, now. Like I played the album last night as a refresher, and just even listening to it now, like it's such a euphoric like summer song. And like Kanye on it, like, oh, I fucking love Kanye on it. Like it's just such a 2010 Kanye verse. You know what I mean? Like
I'm 100%. I'm not 100%, but I'm like 90% sure this is from the Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy sessions.
I would be pretty surprised if it wasn't.
I mean, I think you can hear him doing this sort of MPC runaway thing and the "we got you" on the beat.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's one of those from when Kanye was like my favorite rapper in the world verses.
Yeah.
I probably still do the whole thing from memory. I listened to this song to death. It was my favorite song on the album. Probably still is, although Maybach 3 and Freemason are definitely up there. Freemason is probably the first time that Jay really addresses the Illuminati rumors on record. And I think it's really, the way he does it is really clever. He has a lot of great lines on it. And it's definitely more substantive. I don't know. Again, that's the new theme of the podcast is I don't know how to pronounce big words. Wow, Selby gave this 4.5. I'm shocked. That didn't seem like an album he would give 4.5. Than like their previous ones, which Maybach 1 is just bragging because those tracks are mostly always just bragging. Although 3, on 3 Ross does get a little more personal with like the whole parents never had a real job line. Like I feel like he does, and there are moments of more introspection on here. Like he's definitely fleshing out his character. Like it's still mostly just like bullshit, drug dealer bars, boasts, and stuff. Like it's still just a few bars here and there, but it goes a long way to giving him dimensions and not just making him like a total cartoon character. And it, combined with the fact that he's rapping better than ever on this album, like he hangs alongside Jay and Kanye at his absolute best. And on the trap tracks, like it got to be a parody of himself eventually because he did like 10 million tracks like it. But when he originally started doing it, like there was no doubt that he, like you said, everyone was trying to sound like him on the Luger tracks. And I think the Luger tracks on here, it's slightly different aims than the stuff on Flockavelli. Like you could argue, like there was a more raw, live, I don't want to say punk rock energy, but it's the first word that comes to mind. Stuff about Flockavelli, whereas the Luger stuff on with Ross feels a little more mainstreamed, a little more cinematic, I guess.
Yeah, I think Ross's persona is very different from Waka's, especially around that time where Waka was seen as like this crazy, like, daring, like new artist versus, Rick Ross was already mainstream and he was like this larger than life guy versus Waka was like this, quote unquote kid who was like shaking up the industry with his like music.
This also has the first Drake and Ross collaboration on it. They always do pretty good work together. They'll do probably their best work on his most recent album with Aston Martin Music.
Yeah, this song
Chris
was
on there. That's gorgeous. It's not as good as Mafia Music 2, but it's not like that's like a hard Rick Ross rap song. This is more of a pop. It feels more to me like it's definitely more of a collaboration than a feature with Drake, I would say, which I feel like is the case of most of their songs. Whenever he works with Drake, I feel like he gets more into Drake's lane than vice versa, which is probably good because I don't really want to hear Drake doing some of his tucking in my napkin mobster bars.
No, you're right. I think Aston. I mean, I just want to say also, like, to your point about Aston Martin music, and every single, I would say I'm 2, 4, I think like 7 out of the 11 songs on this album, 7 or 8 of the 11 songs on this album were all over the place. Like this album was a factory for singles and songs that blew up in the mainstream. And Aston Martin music was probably the biggest one, maybe with like BMF. Like Aston Martin music was everywhere. It was like it's probably one of the first Drake hooks that like people remember. I mean, best I ever had, and so So Far Gone was the year before, but still, like this was a huge song for Ross and Drake. I remember it being all over the place.
Yeah, I would say that. What's my point here? Oh yeah, if you've never seen it, you need to watch the video for BMF, which is a clean edit, and the way they edit Styles P's verse is like 90 seconds of silence. I don't even bothered. Like, just do a fucking explicit video. It should be a meme at this point. It's one of the fun. Like, you can barely, like, I seriously don't think he gets out 3 words that aren't muted. Because it's one of those, like, because in the 2000s there'd be certain really heavy-handed censoring of rap videos where they'd mention like any reference to drugs, any reference to guns would get muted, even if it was slang. They wouldn't just mute profanity, and that was one of them. So that's pretty much like every other word out of Styles' mouth on that song, and for the record, for that matter, Ross. So,
Well, I have seen the BMF video. It was definitely years ago, and I remember being like, "Oh, this is censored. That's funny." And then of course the song was mostly silence. Like it was just like real getting money from the. You're like, what?
well, it's especially funny with the visuals too, because like Ross in videos is like super like he's always making crazy constipated faces and yelling and flailing around, but you don't have the audio for like half of the shit he's saying as he's just like screaming at the screen. It's funny. It's worth seeing. So, yeah, I would say if you're gonna start like I wouldn't say it's the best Rick Ross album anymore, but it's definitely the second best. And it's where I would start with him too. If you're gonna dive into his catalog, I'd start here rather than Teflon Don because this is it's more tight, it's more distilled, and I don't think you appreciate Teflon Don, and I don't think you appreciate Port of Miami 2 without hearing this first. So I think Port of Miami 2 is direct. You were the one who said this, that it's definitely more Teflon Don 2 than Port of Miami 2. Because it doesn't really sound like Port of Miami. Like, he's not revisiting, like, boring trap shit from the turn of the decade.
No. Teflon Don was definitely. I feel like Teflon Don. We said this, I think, in the Drake episode, but Teflon Don is like the platonic ideal of like the Rick Ross albums. You know what I mean? Like it takes everything good about Rick Ross and puts it in an album. And I think Teflon Don's. Would you call it a classic? Is it a classic?
It's for a while. I said that I think I had a really overly pithy line in my review where I said like this is the closest that this. Oh no, that was in my review of Deeper Than Rap, which is one of my first RYM reviews, so I probably need to delete it because it sucks. Is like the closest this industry plan is going to come. First of all, I use the term industry plan, which has been ruined.
Right.
Going to come to making a classic, but I think this is probably the closest he would. I don't know if I would consider it's close. It's definitely because when I think about it, like all this, like you said, it was a hit factory. I can go back to it and listen to it pretty much front to back.
Mm-hmm.
And just having one song you skip does not disqualify something from being a classic.
Right.
Although the last track is unmemorable, the Raphael Sadiq song, I don't remember anything about it. It's just there. But like you could end on Aston Martin. But I mean, it was also I remember it also being like a really good Justice League beat and a good hook. Like I don't remember it being bad or anything. It's like a good closing credits music, I would say.
I think you could argue that not only it's peak Ross, it's peak Justice League, and he gets peak performances out of his features for the most part. You know, like this is Kanye at his best. Jay-Z giving you a really good verse in 2010 was probably rare. Same thing he did in the Kanye album. He's got the Drake song was big for Drake, even though Drake was already going to be massive. Styles P, who probably in 2010 wasn't that relevant mainstream, and he got Gucci. And Gucci wasn't like massive, I think. I mean, I know Roger Davis came out the year before, but I don't think outside of Lemonade, I don't think any song really hit mainstream like that.
Wasted.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. And looking at Maybach Music 3, it's the best Maybach music. You got peak T.I., peak Jadakiss. Erica sounds great. I can't remember Erica being on that many big rap songs after that.
I mean, it's a really great event album. It's the equivalent of one of those blockbuster movies, like one of those sequels where the franchise finally hits its stride. I feel
Yeah.
like people talk about the Mission Impossible and Fast and Furious movies that really just started getting good. I haven't seen these. Like, I've only seen the shitty earlier ones, but the later ones where it really starts getting good, they start hitting all the beat. Like, they're really seasoned at putting the formula together. This is, I feel like, the rap equivalent of that.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison. I think it's the same thing. I think whenever like a big mainstream event album hits, it reminds me of like that sort of parallel. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.